Dr. Vexen stood before the observation window, her 4 eyes blinking in confusion. Behind the reinforced glass, a human female was running on a machine the scientists called a treadmill. The human had been running for 2 hours now. 2 hours without stopping. "This cannot be correct," Vexen said to her assistant, a young male named Torek. "Check the sensors again." Torek's thin fingers moved across the control panel. His scales shifted from green to pale blue, showing his own surprise. "The sensors are working perfectly, Doctor. The human is still running. Her heart rate is elevated but stable. Her body temperature has increased by only 2 degrees. She is sweating." Vexen made a sound of disgust. The sweating was the most disturbing part, liquid coming out of the skin to cool the body. It was primitive. It was messy. And according to everything they knew about biology, it should not work as well as it did. The Galactic Science Council had sent Vexen and her team to study humans after first contact 3 years ago. The Council wanted to understand these strange creatures from the edge of the galaxy. At first, Vexen had thought it would be simple work. Humans were soft. They had no claws, no armor, no venom. Their eyes could not see in the dark. Their ears could not hear high sounds. By every measure the Council used, humans should have been prey animals. But they were not prey animals. They were something else entirely. "How long do you think she can continue?" Torek asked. Vexen checked her notes. The human's name was Sarah Chen. She was 32 years old, which meant she was in the middle of her lifespan. She worked as a cargo handler on a transport ship. She was not a soldier or an athlete. She was just a normal human who had volunteered for the study. "Our models predicted she would stop after 30 minutes, Vexen said. "Then we adjusted to 1 hour. Now I do not know what to predict." Through the window, Sarah Chen kept running. Her feet hit the moving belt in a steady rhythm. Her breathing was heavy but controlled. Sweat covered her skin and soaked her thin clothing. She did not look comfortable, but she did not look like she was dying either. Vexen had seen members of her own species, the Calorians, attempt similar tests. Most could run for 10 minutes before their bodies overheated. The Calorians were one of the most advanced species in the Council. They had built starships and colonized hundreds of worlds, but they could not run for 2 hours. The door behind them opened, and High Researcher Mornax entered the observation room. Mornax was old. His scales faded to gray, but his mind was still sharp. He was the one who had ordered the human endurance studies after reading early reports that he refused to believe. "Is she still going?" Mornax asked. "Yes, High Researcher," Vexen said. 2 hours and 14 minutes now." Mornax moved to the window and watched the human run. His tail twitched back and forth, a sign of deep thought. "Have you given her water?" "She has a container of water with her. She drinks while running." "While running," Mornax repeated. "She drinks while running." "Yes, High Researcher." Mornax was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Stop the test. I want to speak with her." Vexen pressed the communication button. "Miss Chen, you may stop now. The High Researcher wishes to speak with you." Through the window, Sarah slowed the machine and stepped off. She grabbed a cloth and wiped her face. Then she drank more water. She did not collapse. She did not even sit down. She just stood there, breathing hard, waiting. Mornax went to the door that led into the test room. Vexen followed him, keeping her recorder active. Whatever the human said, the Council would want to hear it. Sarah Chen smiled when they entered. Her face was red and wet, but she did not seem unhappy. "How did I do?" she asked. "You ran for 2 hours and 16 minutes, Mornax said. "This is far beyond what we expected. How do you feel?" Sarah shrugged. "Pretty good, tired but good. That was a nice workout." Vexen heard Torek make a small choking sound behind her. A workout. The human had just performed a physical feat that no known species could match, and she called it a workout. "Could you have continued longer?" Mornax asked. "Oh, sure," Sarah said. "Back home, I used to run marathons. That's about 42 kilometers. Takes me around 4 hours. This was just a regular training run for me. Mornax's scales went completely white. Vexen had never seen him lose his color before. He was always calm, always controlled, but now he looked like he had seen something impossible. 4 hours, he said. You can run for 4 hours. Well, yeah, some humans can go longer. There are these races called ultramarathons. People run for a whole day, sometimes more. The longest ones go for multiple days. Multiple days, Mornax repeated. His voice was very quiet. Is that weird? Sarah asked. She looked genuinely confused. I mean, I know not everyone runs marathons, but plenty of people do. It's not that special. Vexen stepped forward. Miss Chen, I must ask you something. In your evolutionary history, why would your species develop this ability? What purpose does it serve? Sarah thought about it for a moment. Well, our ancestors used to hunt by chasing animals until the animals got too tired to run anymore. It's called persistence hunting. We can't run as fast as most animals, but we can run longer. We just keep following them until they collapse. The room was silent. Vexen felt a chill run through her body. She had studied many predators in her career. She knew about the fast hunters who caught their prey with speed. She knew about the strong hunters who overpowered their prey with force. She knew about the clever hunters who used traps and ambushes. But she had never heard of a predator that simply followed its prey until the prey died of exhaustion. It was horrifying. It was the kind of hunting method that should not exist in nature. And yet here was a human, standing before her, describing it like it was the most normal thing in the world. We need to do more tests, Mornax said. His voice had recovered some of its strength. Many more tests. Dr. Vexen, I want you to design a complete study of human endurance. Physical, mental, everything. I want to know how these creatures work. Yes, High Researcher, Vexen said. Sarah looked between them with a friendly expression. Happy to help. Just let me know what you need me to do. That was another thing about humans that Vexen did not understand. They were so willing to help. Any other species would have been suspicious of being studied by aliens. They would have demanded something in return. But Sarah Chen just smiled and agreed to whatever they asked. Maybe that was part of their endurance too, Vexen thought. Maybe they could outlast not just physical challenges but social ones as well. Over the next several weeks, Vexen designed the most comprehensive study of alien biology ever conducted by the Science Council. She brought in experts from 12 different species. She ordered the most advanced testing equipment available. She prepared for every possible result. She was not prepared for what she found. The first test was simple. They put humans in hot environments and measured how long they could function. The Calorians had predicted that humans would fail quickly. After all, they were not designed for heat. They came from a planet with mild temperatures. But the humans did not fail quickly. They sweated and drank water and kept working for hours. Even in temperatures that would kill a Calorian in minutes, the humans just complained about the heat and continued with their tasks. The sweating is the key, Vexen explained to the Council in her first report. It is a cooling system that uses water evaporation. It is messy and it requires constant water intake, but it is extremely effective. No other known species has developed this ability to such a degree. The second test was cold environments. Surely the humans would fail there. They had no fur, no fat layer, no internal heating system. They should freeze in minutes. But the humans did not freeze. They shivered, which was their bodies making heat through muscle movement. They curled up to save warmth, and most importantly, they were smart enough to make clothing and fire. This is not fair, one of the council members said during the report on cold resistance. They are using tools. We should test their bodies, not their tools. With respect, Vexen replied, tool use is part of human biology. Their brains are designed to solve problems through invention. Separating humans from their tools would be like separating a calorian from their scales. It is not a complete picture. The council member was not happy, but he did not argue further. The third test was the one that truly changed everything. It was a test of injury recovery. Vexen had been nervous about this test from the beginning. It felt wrong to hurt the humans just to see how they healed. But Sarah Chen and the other volunteers had agreed to it, and the Science Council said it was necessary for understanding human biology. The test was simple: a small cut on the arm, cleaned and bandaged, then observation to see how long the healing took. For calorians, a similar wound would take 3 weeks to fully close. For the Vorton species, it would take 2 months. For the delicate Selene, such a wound would be fatal if not treated immediately. Sarah Chen's cut healed in 6 days. "That is not possible," said Dr. Yeren, the council's expert on biological repair. "The cellular regeneration required would use more energy than a human body can produce." "And yet it happened," Vexen said. "We recorded the entire process. The human immune system is extraordinary. It fights infection, removes damaged tissue, and builds new cells all at the same time." "Show me the recordings," Yeren demanded. Vexen showed him. She showed him how the human blood clotted within minutes to stop the bleeding. She showed him how white blood cells flooded the wound to kill bacteria. She showed him how new skin grew from the edges, slowly closing the gap. Yeren watched in silence. When it was over, he turned to Vexen and said, "I need to rewrite my textbook." "Which section?" Vexen asked. "All of it," Yeren said. "Everything I thought I knew about biological repair is wrong. If humans can heal like this, then my theories about cellular energy limits are worthless." That was when Vexen realized the scope of what they had discovered. The human endurance studies were not just filling in gaps in their knowledge. They were destroying the foundations of galactic biology. She called an emergency meeting with Mornax. "We have a problem," she told him, "or perhaps an opportunity, I am not sure which." Mornax listened as she explained. Humans were not just different from other species. They were different in ways that should not be possible. Their endurance, their healing, their temperature regulation, all of it violated the models that the Council had used for centuries. "Either the humans are wrong," Vexen concluded, "or we are." Mornax was quiet for a long time. His old eyes stared at nothing, lost in thought. Finally, he spoke. "Bring me more humans. I want to test them under every condition we can imagine. If our understanding of biology is wrong, then we must fix it. And if the humans have secrets we have not yet discovered, we must find them." Vexen nodded. "I will send the request today." The request went out across human space. Volunteers were needed for scientific studies. The pay was good, the conditions were safe, and the humans would be helping the entire galaxy understand biology better. Within 1 week, 300 humans had volunteered. "They are very eager," Torek observed as he processed the applications. "Yes," Vexen said, "they always are." She selected 50 volunteers from different backgrounds, young and old, male and female, athletes and workers and artists. She wanted to know if human endurance was limited to certain individuals or if it was a trait of the entire species. She suspected she already knew the answer, but she needed to prove it. The tests continued for 3 months. Every day brought new surprises. Every week brought new impossibilities. They tested how long humans could go without sleep. The average was 40 hours before mental function declined. Some individuals lasted over 70 hours. They tested how long humans could go without food. The volunteers lost weight but remained functional for weeks. One man lasted 40 days before the scientists stopped the test out of concern. They tested human resistance to disease. The human immune system was like nothing they had ever seen. It learned from every infection and became stronger. It could adapt to new threats within days. They tested human psychological endurance. They put humans in isolation, in confined spaces, in stressful situations. The humans complained and suffered, but they did not break. They found ways to cope. They made games out of their suffering. They told jokes about their pain. "I do not understand," Torek said one day as they watched a human volunteer laugh after completing a particularly difficult test. She was in significant discomfort for hours. Why is she laughing? Vexen had been thinking about this question for weeks. She finally had an answer. "Because she survived," Vexen said. "She is celebrating her own endurance. Humans take pride in what they can withstand. The pain is not just something to avoid, it is something to overcome, and overcoming it makes them happy." Torek's scales shifted through several colors as he tried to process this. "That is strange." "Yes," Vexen agreed, "but it explains a great deal about human civilization. They did not conquer their planet by being the strongest or the fastest. They conquered it by refusing to stop." The final report took Vexen 6 months to write. It was 3,000 pages long and included data from over 200 separate experiments. She submitted it to the Science Council with a mixture of pride and fear. The council called an emergency session to discuss her findings. Vexen stood before the assembled scientists, over 100 of the greatest minds in the galaxy, and presented her conclusions. "Humans are persistence predators," she began. "Their entire biology is designed around one principle: endurance. They can run longer than any other species. They can survive in more extreme temperatures. They heal faster. They recover from injury and illness better. They can go longer without food, water, and sleep." She showed them the data. Charts and graphs filled the screens around the chamber. But physical endurance is only part of it. Humans also have extraordinary psychological endurance. They can withstand trauma, stress, and hardship that would destroy other species. They form social bonds that help them share the burden of suffering. They create meaning and purpose even in the most hopeless situations. The council members were silent. Some looked skeptical, others looked afraid. "What does this mean for us?" asked Councillor Bren, one of the senior members. Vexen had prepared for this question. She took a deep breath and gave her answer. "It means we need to rewrite our biology textbooks. Everything we thought we knew about the limits of biological endurance is wrong. Humans have shown us that life can push further than we ever imagined." She paused, letting that sink in. "But it also means something else, something more important." She looked around the chamber at all the faces watching her. "It means we need to understand why humans develop this way. What kind of world creates a species that can outlast anything? What kind of evolution produces creatures that treat suffering as a challenge to overcome rather than a signal to stop?" She brought up images of Earth: blue oceans, green forests, white ice caps. "This is the human homeworld. It looks peaceful, but it is not. It is a world of extreme temperature variations, violent weather, dangerous predators, and constant competition for resources. The humans did not evolve their endurance because they were strong. They evolved it because they were weak." The council chamber erupted in confused murmurs. "Weak," Councillor Bren said. "You just spent an hour telling us how remarkably capable they are." "They are capable now," Vexen said, "but their ancestors were not. Their ancestors were small, soft, slow creatures with no natural weapons. They should have been eaten by predators long before they could develop intelligence. But they survived. They survived because they could keep going when other species had to stop. They survived because pain and exhaustion were not enough to make them give up." She showed them more data: fossil records, genetic analyses, historical accounts. "Humans have a saying, 'That which does not kill me makes me stronger.' It is not just a philosophy. It is biological truth. Human bodies and minds grow stronger in response to stress. Damage that would permanently weaken other species makes humans more resilient. The chamber was completely silent now. We have spent centuries believing that evolution favors the strong, the fast, the powerful, Vexen concluded. Humans have shown us that evolution also favors the stubborn, the persistent, the ones who simply refuse to die. After her presentation, Vexen was approached by dozens of scientists with questions. Some wanted to collaborate on further studies. Others wanted to argue about her conclusions. A few just wanted to meet a human for themselves. But the most important conversation happened later in private, with High Researcher Mornax. "You have done excellent work," Mornax told her. "The Council is impressed, but I am concerned about something." "What concerns you, High Researcher?" Mornax's old eyes were serious. "You have shown the galaxy that humans are remarkable, that they can endure anything, but have you thought about what this means for our relationship with them?" Vexen had thought about it. She had thought about it a great deal. "You mean as allies or enemies?" she said. "Yes, a species that can outlast anything is dangerous, if we ever come into conflict with them." "We would lose," Vexen said simply. "Not immediately, perhaps not even in our lifetimes, but eventually we would lose. They would simply keep fighting until we gave up, and they would never give up." Mornax nodded slowly. "So what do you recommend?" Vexen had an answer for this too. It was the conclusion she had not included in her official report because it was not scientific. It was political. "I recommend that we never give them a reason to fight us," she said. "I recommend that we make them our friends, our partners, our family." "And if we cannot?" Vexen thought of Sarah Chen, smiling and sweating after her 2-hour run. She thought of all the human volunteers who had endured pain and hardship with jokes and laughter. She thought of their strange, terrible, wonderful biology. "Then we hope they decide we are worth keeping around," she said. Mornax made a sound that might have been a laugh. "That is not very comforting." "No," Vexen agreed, "it is not." The human endurance studies continued for years after that. New discoveries were made regularly. New textbooks were written. New theories were developed. And slowly, carefully, the galaxy began to understand what it meant to share the stars with humans. It meant everything had to change. 5 years after the first endurance studies, Vexen received an invitation that surprised her. Sarah Chen, the human who had started it all with her 2-hour run, was getting married. She wanted Vexen to attend the ceremony. Vexen had never been to a human wedding before. She did not know what to expect, but she accepted the invitation because she was curious, and because Sarah had become something like a friend. The ceremony was held on a human colony world called New Haven. Vexen traveled there with Torek, who had become her permanent assistant after the endurance studies made both their careers. New Haven was a beautiful world. Green hills, blue sky, warm sun. It reminded Vexen of the pictures of Earth she had studied so many times. The wedding was held outdoors, in a garden filled with flowers. Hundreds of humans had gathered to watch Sarah marry a man named David. They sat in rows of chairs, talking and laughing and crying all at once. Vexen and Torek were given special seats near the front. They were the only non-humans present, and they attracted many curious looks, but no one was hostile. Several humans came over to shake their hands and thank them for coming. "This is very strange," Torek whispered. "Why are some of them crying? Is this not a happy occasion?" "I believe they cry because they are happy," Vexen said. "Humans have complicated emotional responses." The ceremony began with music. Then Sarah walked down a path between the chairs, wearing a white dress that flowed behind her like water. She was smiling so widely that Vexen could see all her teeth. A human official spoke words about love and commitment. Sarah and David spoke words to each other, promising to stay together for the rest of their lives. Then they exchanged small metal rings and kissed. The crowd cheered. More crying happened. It was all very confusing but also strangely beautiful. After the ceremony, there was a party. Humans called it a reception. There was food and drinks and music, and people danced and talked for hours. Sarah found Vexen and pulled her into a hug. Human hugs were uncomfortable for Calorians, too warm, too close, but Vexen had learned to tolerate them. "Thank you so much for coming," Sarah said. "It means a lot to me." "Thank you for inviting me," Vexen said. "This is a fascinating ritual." Sarah laughed. "It's not just a ritual, it's a promise. David and I are going to spend our whole lives together, through good times and bad times, through sickness and health." "Through sickness and health," Vexen repeated. "That is part of your ceremony." "Yeah, it's about endurance, I guess. Love is about sticking together even when things get hard." Vexen felt something click in her mind, a connection she had not made before. "Sarah, may I ask you something?" "Sure." "All of your endurance, your physical strength, your mental resilience, your ability to recover from anything, where does it come from? What drives it?" Sarah thought about the question for a moment. Her face became serious. "I think it comes from love," she said finally. "We endure because we have things we care about, people we want to protect, dreams we want to achieve. If you don't have anything to live for, you can't survive very long, but if you love something, really love it, you can survive almost anything." Vexen looked around at the wedding party. Humans were everywhere, hugging each other, dancing with each other, sharing food and stories and laughter. They were so connected, so intertwined with each other. "Love is your endurance," Vexen said slowly. "Maybe," Sarah said. "Or maybe endurance is our love, I don't know, I'm not a scientist like you." But Vexen thought Sarah was onto something important. The Calorians were smart, the Vorten were strong, the Seleni were fast, every species had something that made them special. Humans had love. And love, Vexen was beginning to understand, was the most powerful force in the universe. 3 months after the wedding, Vexen published her final paper on human endurance. It was called The Biology of Connection: How Social Bonds Create Physical Resilience. The paper argued that human endurance was not just about biology. It was about psychology and sociology too. Humans could endure more when they had strong relationships with others. They healed faster when they were surrounded by people who cared about them. They survived longer in harsh conditions when they had something to live for beyond themselves. The paper was controversial. Many scientists said Vexen was becoming too emotional, too attached to her subjects. They said she was abandoning real science for philosophy. But the data supported her conclusions. Humans in strong social groups consistently outperformed isolated humans in every endurance test. The effect was measurable, repeatable, and significant. Love made humans stronger. High researcher Mornax read the paper in his office, with Vexen sitting across from him. When he finished, he set down the document and looked at her with his ancient eyes. "This will change things," he said. "I know. Not just biology, everything. The way we think about society, the way we treat each other, the way we approach relationships between species." "I know," Vexen said again. Mornax was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, "Do you think we could learn from them? Could Calorians develop this kind of endurance?" It was a question Vexen had been thinking about for months. She gave him the only honest answer she could. "I do not know. Our biology is different. Our society is different. We cannot simply copy what humans do and expect the same results. But I think we could try. We could invest more in relationships. We could build stronger communities. We could learn to support each other the way humans do." "And you think this would make us stronger?" Vexen nodded. "Not in the same way humans are strong, but stronger than we are now, less alone, more connected." Mornax considered this. His tail swayed slowly back and forth. "Write a proposal," he said finally. "I will present it to the council. We may not be able to match human endurance, but perhaps we can learn from it." Vexen felt a surge of hope. It was a small step, but it was a step in the right direction. "Thank you, High Researcher." "Thank you, Dr. Vexen. You have given us something valuable, a new way of seeing the universe." As Vexen left his office, she thought about everything that had happened since Sarah Chen first stepped onto that treadmill. So much had changed. So many ideas had been overturned. So many new questions had been raised. But the most important discovery was also the simplest. Humans were not just survivors. They were lovers, they were friends, they were family. And that was what made them unstoppable. Vexen's proposal to the council was approved after 6 months of debate. It called for a new initiative, the Galactic Connection Project. The goal was to strengthen social bonds between and within species, using lessons learned from human endurance studies. The project started small: exchange programs between worlds, joint research teams with mixed species, community-building initiatives on colony planets. But it grew quickly. Beings from across the galaxy were hungry for connection. They had been alone for too long, isolated in their separate civilizations, competing for resources and status. Humans led the way, of course. They were natural connectors. They made friends easily, formed partnerships quickly, and maintained relationships across vast distances. They showed other species what was possible when beings truly cared about each other. 10 years after the first endurance studies, Vexen received the highest honor the Science Council could give, the Mornax Prize for Scientific Excellence. It was named after her old mentor, who had died 3 years earlier. The ceremony was held on the council homeworld. Thousands of beings from hundreds of species gathered to watch, and in the front row, sitting next to Torek, was Sarah Chen. Sarah had become something of a celebrity in the years since the studies. She had traveled across the galaxy, speaking about human biology and culture. She had helped establish dozens of connection programs on different worlds. She had become an ambassador for her entire species. And she still ran marathons. Even at 47 years old, she could run for 4 hours without stopping. Vexen took the stage and looked out at the crowd. So many faces, so many species all gathered together. It was beautiful. "When I began studying humans," she said, "I expected to find curiosities, interesting data points, perhaps a few surprises." She paused, remembering those early days in the laboratory. "What I found instead was a revolution, not just in biology, but in how we understand life itself." She looked at Sarah, who smiled back at her. "Humans taught us that endurance is not about being the strongest or the fastest. It is about refusing to give up. It is about caring so deeply about something that you will suffer any hardship to protect it. It is about love." The crowd was silent, listening. We cannot all be human. We cannot all run marathons or heal in 6 days or survive for weeks without food. But we can all learn to love better. We can all build stronger connections. We can all support each other through the hard times. She raised the Mornax Prize, a small crystal statue, and held it up to the light. "This award is not just for me. It is for everyone who participated in the studies, for every scientist who challenged their assumptions, for every being who reached out to make a new friend, for every species that chose connection over isolation." She lowered the statue and looked directly at Sarah. "And most of all, it is for the humans, for showing us what we could become, for teaching us that the greatest strength in the universe is the willingness to keep going together, no matter what." The crowd erupted in applause. Species that had been enemies for centuries stood side by side, clapping and cheering together. Vexen stepped down from the stage and walked to Sarah. The human woman stood up and hugged her, and this time Vexen did not find the hug uncomfortable. "Not bad for a 4-eyed lizard scientist," Sarah said, laughing. "Not bad for a sweaty running mammal," Vexen replied. They stood there together, surrounded by the galaxy they had helped to change. It was a good moment, a moment worth enduring for. And there would be many more moments to come. 20 years after the first endurance studies, the galaxy was a different place. The Galactic Connection Project had grown into something larger than anyone had imagined. Species that had been strangers now worked together on joint missions. Worlds that had been isolated now welcomed visitors from across the stars. And at the center of it all was a simple idea. That endurance comes from love, and love makes all things possible. Vexen was old now, her scales faded to gray like Mornax's had been. She had retired from active research, but she still consulted on major projects. She still gave lectures to young scientists. She still kept in touch with Sarah Chen, who had finally retired from marathons but still ran every day. One morning, Vexen received a message from the Science Council. They were opening a new research center dedicated to the study of interspecies connections. They wanted to name it after her. Vexen thought about refusing. She had never liked attention. She preferred to work quietly, collecting data and writing papers. But then she thought about Mornax, who had believed in her work when no one else did. She thought about Torek, who had been by her side through every discovery. She thought about Sarah, who had started everything by running on a treadmill for 2 hours. She accepted the honor. The Vexen Center for Connection Studies opened 6 months later. It was a beautiful building, with windows that looked out on a garden filled with plants from 100 different worlds. Scientists from every species worked there, studying how beings formed bonds across biological and cultural differences. At the opening ceremony, Vexen gave one final speech. When I was young, she said, I believed that science was about understanding the universe, about finding patterns and rules and laws, about knowing. She looked at the crowd of young scientists before her. But humans taught me something different. They taught me that science is also about connecting, about reaching out to the unknown and making it familiar, about building bridges between beings who should have nothing in common. She gestured to the garden outside, where flowers from Earth grew next to ferns from Caloria and vines from Vorten. Look at what we have created together. 100 species working as one, not because we are the same, but because we chose to care about each other, because we chose to endure together. She smiled, and for a moment she looked almost young again. That is the true lesson of human endurance. It is not about how long you can run or how much pain you can tolerate. It is about how deeply you can love and how far you are willing to go for the ones you love. She stepped back from the podium. Go forth and study connection. Go forth and build bridges. Go forth and endure together. The crowd applauded. Young scientists from every species looked at her with admiration and hope. Vexen felt tired but happy. She had done good work. She had helped change the galaxy, and now it was time to let others continue the journey. After the ceremony, she found a quiet bench in the garden and sat down to rest. The sun was warm on her scales. The flowers smelled sweet. It was peaceful. A few minutes later, someone sat down beside her. It was a young human, barely 20 years old, with bright eyes and eager energy. Dr. Vexen, the young human said, I'm so honored to meet you. I read all your papers. They changed my life. Vexen smiled at the young human. What is your name? Chen, Maria Chen. Sarah Chen is my grandmother. Vexen felt a surge of joy. Sarah's grandchild, here at the center that bore her name. Your grandmother is a remarkable woman, Vexen said. She told me to tell you something, Maria said. She said to tell you that she still runs every day, and she still thinks about that first treadmill test. Vexen laughed. It was a good laugh, full of warmth and memory. Tell her I still think about it too, Vexen said. It was the day everything changed. Maria smiled. She also said to tell you that you were wrong about one thing. Oh, what was that? She said you thought human endurance was special, but she says it's not. She says every species has endurance. They just need something to endure for. Vexen considered this. It was a profound thought coming from a marathon runner. Perhaps she is right, Vexen said. Perhaps we all have more endurance than we know. That's what I want to study, Maria said. I want to find the endurance in every species. I want to show the galaxy what they're capable of. Vexen looked at the young human, Sarah's grandchild, carrying on the legacy, and felt hope for the future. Then study, she said. Learn, connect, endure. Maria grinned. I will, thank you, Dr. Vexen, for everything. She stood up and walked back toward the research center, full of energy and purpose. Vexen watched her go, feeling at peace. The humans had taught the galaxy so much about endurance, about love, about connection. But perhaps the most important lesson was the simplest. The journey never ends. There is always more to discover, always more to learn, always more to love. And as long as there are beings willing to reach out to each other, willing to care for each other, willing to endure together, the galaxy will keep growing stronger. That was the true legacy of the human endurance studies. Not the data, not the papers, not the awards, but the connections they built, the bridges they made, the love they shared. That was what would last forever. And Vexen, sitting in her garden on a warm afternoon, smiled at the thought. It had been a good life. And there was still so much more to come.